Hello everyone, thank you for tuning into my video today, and this is going to be a quick demonstration on how to make a tender and flaky pie crust. Now you can use whatever recipe that you may have. I am going to give you a recipe that you can use if you don't have one, but basically the purpose of this video is to show you the technique to make sure that your crust is nice and flaky, and it will work with any pie crust recipe that you have. Now I do my pie crust completely by hand. There are recipes that show you how to do them in a food processor. There are recipes that show you how to do them in a stand mixer. I have done all different ways, but the way that I prefer is to do it by hand because this way to me ensures that I don't overmix. And that is the number one offender when it comes to a tough and chewy pie crust. And what we're looking for are those wonderful flakes that we see when it bakes up nice and golden brown. So we're going to do this by hand. And what I'm using today, now I'm doing a large batch because I have a large order for sweet potato and apple jacks going out. I use this crust for my jacks. I use it for my pies. I do alternate sometimes. The recipe I'm giving you today uses 100% Crisco shortening, but depending on the pie or what I'm making, sometimes I do all butter, sometimes I do half butter and half shortening. So it depends on what you're making. Now I prefer when I do any pie that has a double crust, like an apple pie, blueberry pie, cherry pie, something of that nature, I do like to use at least a 50-50 of butter and shortening, but you can do all butter. For something like these jacks, they're being deep fried. So Crisco works better because butter tends to burn really fast. So your pie crust can burn up before your filling is actually ready. So again, this recipe is really simple. It's probably the most basic you'll get. I have a ×4 batch right here, but I'm going to give you, and I also put in the comment section, the recipe for a single batch, which will make you a single crust. So if you're going to do a double crust pie, you would double the recipe. If you're going to make, like when I make jacks or empanadas, out of the one batch, I can get about 8 4-inch circles. So you can go from there. But this right here is a 4 times batch. So when you go to make yours, don't be alarmed if yours looks a lot smaller. All right. So what I have here in my bowl is 8 cups of flour. Now, again, this is my 4 times batch. So let me go ahead and give you the single batch recipe first, which is 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/2 cup of solid shortening, or 1/2 cup of butter, or 1/4 and 1/4, depending on what kind of crust you want and what you're making. And then also 1/2 cup of ice cold water. Now the key to a flaky crust is 2 parts. One, you want your ingredients to be as cold as possible, mainly your shortening or butter and your water. So I put a few ice cubes in my water just to make it super ice cold. My shortening or my butter, I stick in the freezer before I use it, just so everything is nice and cold. So that keeps your fat at a solid throughout the process, so that when you bake, the shortening or the butter starts to melt in between the layers of dough, and it creates those nice flaky layers. So again, cold, cold, cold. So for the sake of this batch here that I'm doing as a 4-time batch, I have 8 cups of flour. I have a tablespoon plus a teaspoon of kosher salt. I have 2 cups of solid shortening that's been sitting in the freezer. And I have 2 cups of ice water. And then I also have a little bit of all-purpose flour here just in case I need it, but most of the time I do not. Now, it is kind of hard to work with the dough with gloves on. So, and most of the time, you're not serving anyone raw dough. So it's okay to not have your gloves on as long as you've washed your hands and cleaned your surface, because you're going to cook it anyway. So I have my flour here. I'm going to add my kosher salt. And then I'm sorry, my Pastry Blender. You also want one of these. If you don't have one of these, you can use a fork. And some people even use their hands. But your hands generate heat, which will start to melt your fat and make your dough hot. So I suggest that if you do not have a Pastry Blender, which these are really inexpensive, you can find them anywhere. I think I bought this one from Walmart a million years ago. And it's been through it. It's all bent up and everything, but it still works great. But if you don't have one of these or don't want to purchase one of these, a good old-fashioned fork will do you just fine. So all I'm going to do is just do a little mix here to get my salt incorporated in the flour. That's all you got to do. Then I'm going to take my shortening and put it all in here. Now I'm going to do a little bit more work than what you'll probably have to do, because if you're doing just a single batch or a double batch, it's going to go really quick for you. And again, the key is you don't want to overmix. So I said there were two components here. One is that you want your ingredients to be cold, ice cold, your water and your shortening or your butter. And then the other thing is you don't want to overwork your dough. And we'll talk about that as we go through the process here. So I have my shortening, and all I'm going to do is just blend it into the flour. And again, you can do this with a fork. You can do it with your hands, but just remember, when you work with your hands, you are generating heat, and that can make your shortening or your butter warmer than you would like for it to be. And I'm just working on a non-stick mat here. It's actually a mat that you buy like out of the sewing section. I'm really practical with my supplies. I like things that work, not necessarily what's really fancy and cute. So I got one of these nice Fiskars mats right out of the sewing section. It's double-sided. One side, this gray side, I use for all of my fondant work, my dough work. And then the other side, the light colored side, is the side that I use when I'm working on Cricut projects and whatnot. So I keep one side like totally food safe and the other side for crafts. So pretty practical. So as you can see, all I'm doing is just, tossing this around and pressing the shortening into my flour, and I'm getting these little crumbs. Some people say it looks like wet sand. Some people say pea size. It's hard to judge all of that, because sometimes your flour may look like it has pea size crumbles, and then other times you got pebbles and rocks and wet sand, and it just looks like a lot. So all I say is that you keep blending it until you can tell that your shortening is well incorporated and as evenly distributed as possible. It's not the exact same amount of flour to shortening, so of course it's going to still be a little bit more dry and not a 50-50. But, and this is pretty good here. So if you see, it still looks like flour with just a few little lumps in it. And I love getting my hands dirty in flour and dough. So if you don't like getting your hands dirty, then you may want to try the food processor method. And they do have dough blades for those. I've done it. I don't necessarily care for it because I feel like it overworks my dough. And then the same is true with the mixer. So I have a little bit more than 2 cups of water here because I put ice cubes in it. So I'm going to pour some of it out, because this is a pretty precise measurement. So this 2 cups should do me just fine. So I just make a little well here. You don't have to go all the way down to the bottom. And I'm going to pour my water in. And then I'm just going to take my pastry blender again and start to pull it together. And all we're looking for it to do is to come together. We can finish the rest of it on our surface. You don't have to have a non-stick mat. Some people do their dough in between parchment paper or wax paper. Some people do it in between saran wrap. I've tried that a couple times. It just doesn't work for me. And as you can see, it's starting to come together. And that's all we want it to really do, is just come together. We don't want it to become a smooth ball. I've seen some recipes that say that, but I feel like once you have gone to a smooth ball, then you've overmixed it. So you really want it to be crumbly. So we're almost there. And I'm basically just soaking up all the water is really what I'm doing. All right, so that looks good. And what you'll see, hold on, I'll show you. So some of it has formed already into dough and some of it is still dry. But that's okay, because we're going to do the rest on our surface here by hand. See how there's still a lot of dry in there? But that's okay. Remember, we don't want to over mix this. That's the main thing here. So now I'm just going to pull it together just like kneading dough. But I'm just trying to get all of the dry pieces moist. So all we're doing is just pulling it together. And you can kind of see the flakiness of it. Like once it gets into a solid dough, like this isn't like sugar cookie dough here. We don't want everything to be smooth and perfect. We just want it to come together enough so we can roll out our dough. And then the best part is, because your ingredients are so cold, you don't have to refrigerate it. I'm going to separate this a little bit here so I can work with it without overworking it. But yeah, because all your ingredients are cold, you don't have to refrigerate it before you roll this out. You can, if you're making this in advance, you can refrigerate this. You can freeze it and then just let it sit out for a little bit. But you don't have to refrigerate it before you roll it out, like some recipes tell you to. So this is about as together as I want it. And if you look, see, these are your layers already forming. This is what you want to see. You don't want, I'm going to show you, you don't want like one of these nice smooth dough balls. Like this is not what you want, right? Because you've overworked it. You're going to get it smooth enough when you roll it out. So I'm going to put this part here and make sure this one is together as we can get it. And if you still have some crumbs on your surface, that's fine. It'll come together when you roll it. You shouldn't need to dust your surface, especially if you're using a mat of some sort, or like the parchment paper, or some people put it on a cutting board. I mean, whatever method works for you. But I like space. So these mats are great because it gives you a lot of space. And then you can also get, let me see if I have it nearby. I don't have it nearby, but I'll put a link. You can get a pie crust mat, and I know that may sound a little drastic, but they are wonderful. And actually, I'm gonna pause, y'all. Give me 1 second, and I'm gonna go get it for you. All right, y'all, I'm back. I wanted to show you this. So this actually came with a really cool rolling pin that I ordered off Amazon, and I'll put the link in the comments. But these mats, you can purchase them separately. I've seen them at the craft stores and the cake supply stores, and sometimes you can find them in a grocery store. But these mats are amazing. They're silicone, and you see there's measurements all around it. It has like a temperature chart because they're heat safe. It has a conversion chart over here. I mean, not all of them have all of that, but this one is pretty cool. But the best part is this part right here for when you're rolling out your crust. So, for example, if you have a 9-inch pie tin, 9-inch right here, you want to roll it out to at least 10 or 11, depending on what you want to do with your crust. So this mat is awesome. It saves you a lot of time and guesswork and keeps you from having to keep folding your dough up, roll it back out until you get the right size. So I'm probably going to do another video and showing you how to roll it out because I didn't think about that at first. But I'm going to do a part 2 to show you how to roll your crust out if we don't have time to do it. But you basically just take your piece of dough, put it on here, and roll it to the measurements. And it keeps a non-stick surface because the more flour you add, the more you're drying your crust out, and we don't want that. So this is a great tool to have too. And it's just a silicone pastry mat. And most of them, when you pull it up online, most of them have that little pie diagram or measurement chart in the middle. So we have our dough. And this was the basis of this video, was just to show you how to make the dough. I'm going to do a part 2 to show you some easy ways to roll out your dough. Not assuming that you don't know how, but for those who this is your first time, I'd like to show you a nice, quick, and easy way to roll your dough out and put it in your pie pan. So I hope this was helpful. I had a few people ask me about it, and I tried to type and respond with instructions, and it was just too much. So I thought I'd make a quick video. I'm not really a video professional at all. So hope this was helpful enough. Hope you all could see okay, could hear me okay. And just let me know what you think in the comments. I love to share everything that I know. So if you want to learn, I'll be happy to make the videos. So I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I'm sorry. Summer Whitehead of Southern Sugar, VA. I am your Southern Sugar Mama. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram at Southern Sugar VA. Please leave your comments. Please click like if you liked it or if it was helpful. Please feel free to follow me on social media. Like I said, these instructional videos are all brand new to me, but I wanted to share with you all. So I hope you enjoy. Bye-bye.